Allen Lund Company has new offices in Ogden, Utah, and Indianapolis, Indiana. Check allenlund.com to reach them.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Mark Reddick.
In the wake of the two recent hurricanes, officials are warning truckers about going into some areas. I'll cover that and more with Landline Magazine managing editor Jamie Jones. A confusing court case in Texas has left intrastate oilfield drivers in the lurch with regard to overtime pay. Tyson Fisher of Landline Magazine helps fill in the gaps. Then Mark Schremer explains how a bill in Congress would solve not just this problem, but many others. From the people who are stepping up to help victims of recent hurricanes recover and get back to normal, to whoever slashed 56 tires on trucks in Tennessee, S.J. Munoz, Ryan Witkowski, and Tyson Fisher will offer up some Roses and Razzberries. And finally, recent news of those tires being slashed at a truck stop in Tennessee prompted several calls to OOIDA's truck insurance department wanting to know what they should do if something like that happens to them. Trista Roby and Trina Skywalker join us with some answers. But first, here's today's news. Joining me now in Studio A is Landline Magazine managing editor Jamie Jones. And the big news in trucking is still the recovery from our recent hurricanes, Helene and Milton. First thing we've got is this notice from the North Carolina Department of Transportation kind of regarding travel in and out of these, or in their case, specifically the hurricane zone from Helene in the western part of that state. Jamie, what are some of the basic outlines that truckers need to know from this notice?
Right. Just for a little context, it's really great that we do have these partners around the country with different transportation coalition groups, state DOTs, everything that contact OOIDA and specifically ask us to help get this word out. And, you know, for a professional email, this thing is pleading with truckers who are non-essential. All non-essential travel should be avoided in North Carolina right now. So, and that is doubly so for the western portion. And it's there's also one of the restrictions that's really kind of odd. Travel between North Carolina and Tennessee is extremely limited, especially for trucks greater than 30 feet long. So, you know, and it may be limited to essential-only traffic. It may be limited to emergency response only because things are so bad. Even the I-40 and I-26 that are closed at the Tennessee-North Carolina, there's not even a timetable for reopening I-40. So the first thing, and you know, I know truckers get so tired. Guys and gals, I know you hate hearing this, but trip planning is 100% essential if you are heading east right now. And that is, for everything else, we'll go for other reasons. But you cannot trust your GPS because the way this thing is so fluid with roads opening and closing, opening with restrictions that they previously didn't have, you need to be checking out the state DOT maps and find out for sure what you're heading into and potentially how you could avoid it. And to make it even easier, on our resources tab at Landline Media or landline.media, there is actually a link to every state DOT's roadmap. So with live updates. So you can just go to our website, one click, and you can pick any state you need to check out. So that trip planning is more. And like I said, this email, they're basically just pleading with everyone to please check. And if you don't have a reason to be there, just don't go.
Yeah. And reason to be there doesn't include, well, I've just got a regular load. It needs to be a relief recovery load.
100%. We've been there before. And, you know, if your local church group holds a drive or whatever and asks you to take a relief load in, don't. They need to be invited, ordered loads at this point because even the most well-meaning relief efforts can get in the way of actual recovery.
And folks, one of the groups that can connect you with that, if it's possible, is ALAN, the American Logistics Aid Network, at ALANAID, ALANAID.org, I believe.
Right. And, you know, it's really important because I know a lot of people who are out there want to help. It's important to them. And getting FEMA approved is not going to happen in time to help with this. So that Allen organization is absolutely the way if you want to get involved with an actual relief load or recovery load, that's how you would do it.
Now, this is Helene, and of course, Milton has passed through Florida, created a whole new mess for us to deal with. And I know you've got some stats and some information about what's happening post-Milton.
Yeah, and it's everything that you would normally expect as far as the damage. Fortunately, Milton lost a lot of steam because it was a Category 5. That was looking really scary. It was to the point that it was literally to the strength that the atmosphere could produce. I mean, that's how strong this storm was at one point. So it hit land as a 3, crossed over the Florida as a Category 1. So I know Floridans, that may be like us in the Midwest standing outside looking at tornadoes, but, which is not a good idea. But, the damage was, somewhat significantly less than what we expected. But then you talk about St. Petersburg that had 18 inches of rain dumped on it. It was a 1 in 1,000 year rainfall for that area. So that the infrastructure there is taxed just trying to handle all that water. The death toll, unfortunately, combined were over the 2 hurricanes where we topped 230 already. And that number's just going to continue to grow. As long
as they find people.
As long as they find people, to be blunt about it, yes. And I think it's just important, again, to not go in those areas if you're not needed, because it's things like that they're still having to do. They're literally having to take chainsaws and get streets open to get to people's homes still. So it's a lot. And the big thing that complicates all of it, to no surprise, is the lack of fuel. We're already starting to see those fuel shortages. We're seeing shortages of gasoline cans, fuel containers. So people are using water jugs just to fill chainsaws and whatnot with gas. So again, back to the trip planning, I think it's really important that you do check out and make sure that you have fuel and you get fuel when you can, because you could easily be in an area that is very strapped for any sort of fuel.
Well, and something else they've noted here is even some places that have the fuel's been contaminated by seawater coming in with this storm.
Yeah, nobody needs that. So, and that's what's causing a lot of the problem is just that contamination.
One of the other things you noted, and we've just got a little bit of time left here, Georgia is trying to help out a little bit in terms of the cost of people going in there with the fuel tax.
Right. And actually, Georgia is doing it good. We have a fuel tax suspension, so you're just paying for the cost of the fuel. And they have smartly also waived the IFTA mile obligation for Georgia. Now, if you're buying untaxed fuel in Georgia and then you run in a state that hasn't waived IFTA, that could hurt your quarterly filing. So you really have to be fuel smart on that one, too. That cheap fuel could come back to bite you in the butt at the end of the quarter if you buy too much of it.
Okay. Well, we've run out of time here, Jamie. I know we'll talk about this a lot more as things move forward, but thank you very much for the information.
Hey, you're welcome, Mark.
I've been talking with Landline Magazine Managing Editor Jamie Jones. Registration is now open for OOIDA's Truck to Success seminar starting October 22nd in Blue Springs, Missouri. You can still register to attend by Zoom anytime before October 21st. Get more information at OOIDA.com. Starting Saturday, Marty Ellis and OOIDA's tour truck, The Spirit of the American Trucker, will be at the ATHS Yellow Rose Truck Show. That takes place at the J.B. Wells Park Pavilion in Gonzales, Texas. Stop in, say hi to Marty, and join OOIDA for a $10 discount. Next, Tyson Fisher discusses a court case involving oilfield drivers and overtime pay. We'll be back in just a moment with more of the program. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Control your toll costs and eliminate tolling headaches with Prepass Tolls. Prepass Tolls means toll volume discounts. Just one invoice for all tolls and fewer violations. Call 877-878-5970 or go to prepass.com.
Are you tired of the IRS following you around like a dark cloud? Call 888-557-4020 and get your life back.
At Truck Stop, we've built a better load board for carriers like you. Sign up today and access over 600,000 loads on the most trusted online load board. Learn why the best in the business rely on Truck Stop to make more money and start driving your profit today.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
Welcome back. We're going to spend a little time now looking at a federal appeals court ruling that involves oil tanker drivers and overtime pay. The decision could have broader implications, and joining us to discuss are Tyson Fisher and Mark Schremer of Landline Magazine. Gentlemen, good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for having us on.
Tyson, you did a deep dive on this case. It's out of Texas. Let's start with the basics here with, I guess, who's involved and what's at the heart of this dispute.
So this involves intrastate oil field truckers in Texas for the most part. And it's really important to emphasize that intrastate because that's going to play a big role in this story. But essentially, the basic facts of the case are undisputed, which is these are truck drivers who are picking up oil at an oil field in Texas, and they're delivering that to a pipeline also located in Texas. There's no crossing of state lines. The whole thing is in Texas. And so the issue with the case is that the company called Ace Gathering, they have not been paying these truck drivers overtime due to the federal overtime exemption that's usually reserved for interstate truck drivers. And so the question is, well, how? How is this happening? And that's exactly why they filed a lawsuit, because these are, for the most part, intrastate truck drivers. And so what the company is arguing, and this is really the heart of the case, is that although the trucking operation itself is intrastate, the oil, the product, the cargo, has a final destination somewhere else, Mm-hmm. And so you're picking up the oil at the oil field and you're dropping it off there, but that's not at the pipeline, but that's not where the journey ends for the oil.
Destination.
The final destination is usually a refinery like in Louisiana or going to the foreign export market. But the point being is the oil doesn't stop. So the question is, well, does that count, for interstate trucking? And what the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals found is that when it comes to determining whether or not you are exempt from overtime pay, it doesn't matter what your specific leg of that journey of the cargo is. In this case, the truck drivers driving interstate. What matters is the origins of the cargo and the final destination of that. And so with these truck drivers, they were involved with the transportation of the oil that was going to end up eventually, crossing state lines. And so because of that, technically they are involved in interstate commerce. Although their specific part of that operation is intrastate, they are still involved in the transportation of something that's going to be crossing state lines. And so therefore you are exempt from overtime pay. So it sounds like a crazy loophole, and it's because it is. And it gets really deep into the weeds as far as how do we get here, as far as the legalese and the statute and whatnot. And that's kind of what the Fifth Circuit kind of picked apart, was this, how do we get here? Because this part of the federal exemption, it doesn't explicitly say what this court has been saying, right?
Right.
Although courts have interpreted it this way for quite some time. So this is legal precedent, and this is what the Fifth Circuit was going off of. And that's a very important distinction, because within that Fifth Circuit panel opinion that was written, one of the judges wrote a concurring statement, right? So he agreed that this was the right decision for them, but he also kind of hinted, but it's like the only reason why that they were making this decision was because of the legal precedent. They're bound by precedent. But when you look at the statute, when you look at the history of the statute in the text and the Department of Labor rules kind of giving guidance on how to apply this rule, it's a little bit more ambiguous. It's a little bit more confusing. It's just that the courts in the past have interpreted it this way, and so this is how we're going to do it. And so it kind of leaves open leaves room open at least for at least the federal government in terms of either the Department of Labor or maybe Congress itself to go back to the drawing table and to be more explicit onto how we apply this rule. Because right now, the way it's being applied, in my opinion, this is more of a letter of the law versus the spirit of the law, which is the reason why we have this interstate exemption that has to do with, highway safety, which we can argue all day long, and we probably will here in a little bit. That's BS. That's not at all what's happening, but we'll just go ahead and let that slide. And the last thing I'll say about this real quick is to give you an example of how this loophole doesn't make sense. So let's say you have two trucking operations. One is a Nebraska trucking operation where they're picking up corn at a cornfield in Nebraska, and they're sending it to a distribution center in Nebraska, and all that corn is going to be distributed to grocery stores in Nebraska. So the origins of the corn is Nebraska, and the final destination Nebraska, all interstate. Those truck drivers get overtime pay. And now compare that to this oil field example I just gave you, where they don't get overtime pay. From the perspective of those two truck drivers, whether it's Nebraska or Texas, from their perspective, their operations are pretty much identical in terms of where they're going to, interstate. There's nothing different about what they do except for where the cargo they're dropping off, where it ends up, which is like, why do they care? Why does it matter? How does that pertain to them? It really doesn't. It's just this technical legal loophole exempts the oil field drivers from overtime pay, whereas those corn drivers get the overtime. It makes no sense whatsoever. And it's like, man, if only there was a way we can solve this problem. If there was, I don't know, some bill in Congress right now, for example, that might solve this issue. So, yeah.
You just lobbed it right up for Mark Schrimmer there. Yeah, the bill you're talking about is the Guaranteeing Overtime for Truckers Act, H.R. 6359. We've covered this before. I will say it has not gained a lot of traction since it was introduced last November. Perhaps cases like this will bring attention to it, but essentially, and Mark, you've covered this quite a bit over the past several months. This bill would, as Tyson alluded to there, kind of clear that confusion, right?
Yeah, because basically what it would do, instead of having to argue whether or not that you're interstate or interstate in these, there would be no exemption. That's what it would do. Company drivers, motor carriers would now be obligated to pay them for their time over 40 hours in a work week, just like pretty much everybody else, any blue collar construction jobs, anything like that, similar types of jobs, they are paid for the extra time. Truck drivers, go to shipping and receiving facilities. We talk about detention time all the time. They're waiting for hours, and meanwhile, those people that are unloading their trucks or loading them up are probably getting paid overtime. And truck drivers a lot of times are not getting paid anything at all because everything is so mileage based for most truck drivers. The old adage, if you're not earning, if the wheels aren't turning, is what they say. And it all comes down to what the Got Truckers Act would do is it would help put value on a truck driver's time. And just doing that would, I think, help alleviate a lot of the problems that we see in the trucking industry right now.
Yeah, and let's be clear, because the bill as it stands right now would guarantee overtime pay for employee truck drivers,
company
right?
drivers, yeah.
Which, owner-operators out there may be thinking, this doesn't apply to me. Why do I really, or why should I care about it? But as you kind of point out, it's kind of like a rising tide lifts all ships kind of thing.
Yeah, no, definitely would. And if you just put that as the standard of that, that they have to value drivers' time with the company drivers, that's going to move rates up, and that's going to help owner-operators as well. And like I said, when I talk about some of the problems that are in the trucking industry right now, the ones I look at that we hear all the time is detention time, as I mentioned. It's the time that truck drivers are out there sitting for hours. They're not getting paid. It hurts the supply chain, hurts the efficiency of it. There's so many issues and lost money and wages straight out of a driver's pocket when that stuff's going on. If those drivers are sitting there getting overtime hours while they're sitting there, if you actually value all of a driver's time, if you start doing that type of thing, there's going to be the pressure to, we better get this truck unloaded because, somebody's getting time and a half right now.
Time is literally money for them.
Yeah. If you can do that. What do we hear all the time from the large fleets? There's a driver shortage. Well, the news is there's not a driver shortage. What there is a huge driver turnover problem because of the lack of pay, poor working conditions, and they can't keep drivers employed. So they either go off and work for a small carrier or get out of the trucking business entirely. And again, if you start making the profession more lucrative and actually value your time, it's a hard job. They're out on the road for weeks at a time, often, all these hours. And if they're not getting paid for all of it, and you're not even be able to get overtime wages, you can see why a lot of people go, maybe I just go try to, work somewhere back in my hometown and be able to, go to my kids' ball games and do that type of thing. It's easy to think that. The other part of it that I would bring up, that if you value a truck driver's time and you pass this bill, other thing it'll do, we hear all the time about speeding, and they want to put speed limiters on trucks. But again, we go back to this system where we're paid by the mile, and it's all incentivized to get there as fast as you can.
Yeah.
If you're actually valuing all of the hours that a driver works, then they don't have to push it up. They don't have to, speed limiters, one of the reasons they don't work is this idea, okay, we slow it down to 65. So now in the 75 mile an hour zone, I can only go 65 miles an hour. So now I'm in a 45 mile an hour construction zone and I'm trying to make my money. Yeah. So you're going to go 55 through it. And so you haven't helped the problem. You've probably created a more dangerous situation.
You just shifted it to a different area and
and really it's obviously less dangerous for everybody to go 75 than it is for a truck to go 55 through a construction zone that's supposed to be 45. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's pretty clear. So if you do these things and you support this type of bill, I do think that it would help in all three of these areas, and it would clear up this weird legal loophole and save some time and money in the courts on stuff like this too.
Yeah, I mean, and just to kind of echo what you've been saying, that's exactly why everyone should care about this overtime exemption with employee drivers. It's why owner-operators should care. The entire industry should care about this. We should want employee drivers to get overtime pay for the reasons why you just explained. It has cascading effects on the entire industry, and the research is clear. And I wrote about this earlier this year. I talked to a professor who has done the research on driver pay and how it affects highway safety specifically. And the evidence is clear, which is if you pay drivers what they deserve, if you pay the drivers more, the industry gets better as far as safety goes. J.B. Hunt increased pay by 30% in the late 90s, and then immediately after their safety record increased in a positive way. And it was pretty obvious why. It's because you're retaining the good drivers, the veteran drivers who are safer drivers, and you're also attracting a higher quality pool of applicants by offering more money. So it's just so clear how just more money can solve not all the problems, but a good chunk of the problems. It just comes down to paying the workers.
FMCSA will say exactly what he said too to back up that research, that they've said over and over that more experienced drivers are safer drivers. They have that data to prove that, and obviously the more experienced drivers are probably getting paid more. It all goes through. I mean, if you make this a job that people want to be in, more safe drivers will stay.
Yeah, and I'll add to that, a driver who feels valued is a safe driver as well. It all comes together in the end here.
Interconnected.
For more details on this case, the Got Truckers Act and more, you can check out Tyson and Mark's work at landline.media and fightingfortruckers.com. A great resource if you want to reach out to your lawmakers and educate them on this, because I guarantee most of them don't understand this, and you can help educate them there. Tyson, Mark, we appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks.
We're about to run into a break here, but hang tight. Landline Now is back in just a moment.
Penske owns and operates some of the best-maintained vehicles on the planet. Our used trucks come with a 5-year maintenance report and pre-sale inspection. So if you're in the market for a top-quality pre-owned truck, look no further. Search our inventory today at PenskeUsedTrucks.com.
Capital Reman, the leader in remanufactured diesel engines and components, has partnered with OOIDA to offer exclusive member benefits. Visit CapitalReman.com today to support America's transportation industry and take advantage of your benefits.
When it's time to overhaul your truck engine, help protect it by insisting on a genuine Vibertech TVD crankshaft damper. Heavy duty, absolute premium quality, and they're made right here in the USA. Find a dealer at VibertechTVD.com.
Landline Now, welcome back. Has your senator or congressman made you happy lately? Did the truck stop make you kind of sad? When they do either one, here at Landline, we have a special way of responding.
Ew.
We call it Roses and Razzberries. Staff writer S.J. Munoz keeps track of such things for Landline Magazine and for our program. S.J. is here now with the good, the bad, and the ugly from recent news.
Back with another edition of Roses and Razzberries. S.J. Munoz, Ryan Witkowski, Tyson Fisher, the usual suspects. We'll use that in a good term in this way. So here we go. I'm putting you on the spot. Best Halloween candy. Go, Tyson. What we got here?
Oh, man. Top of my head, Twix.
That's a good one. Let's go.
I like the really crappy candies as we've already. Give me some banana Laffy Taffies.
Oh, yeah, look at this guy.
Those peanut butter Taffies, you know what I'm talking about?
Like the ones
orange and black
look like there might
wrappers.
be some substance in there before you open them. Yeah. So
hook me up with a Chico stick. I'm all about that.
Real quick, I'm going to rescind my first thing. Three Musketeers.
Ooh, yeah, that is a good one.
Okay, yeah.
Well, and that's kind of one, too. If you do like it, it's good because a lot of people don't, so you get loaded up. That's what I was thinking. Ryan, when you were a kid, you were probably like just loading, because everyone's like, I don't want this. I'll take it. I'm going to go with anything sour.
That would shot at my weight, sir?
That would no, not at all.
Ryan, you were a fat kid.
All right, and then just as always, we want to remind you to get back on track here, Ryan. If ideas for roses or raspberries, please send those to roses@landlinemag.com. Looks like we have quite a few roses to get started here. So, Tyson, why don't you go ahead and do the honors?
Yeah, so roses to a bunch of roses to all the truck drivers who have participated, volunteered their time, equipment, services to help with Hurricane Helene relief efforts. And as a matter of fact, we might as well throw in Milton now, too, since that's also going on, unfortunately. So, I've seen a bunch of reports from local news media outlets just, highlighting how the local trucking company over there is volunteering, take a bunch of donations and, driving them out to North Carolina to the impacted areas of that storm. So, and that's kind of like a common theme with Roses and Razzberries, which is we always talking about the charitable nature of the trucking industry as a whole. And we see it year round, especially with Special Olympics and the similar causes like that. But I think we see how responsive to other people's needs truckers are during natural disasters. Because when you think about it, so unlike charity convoys, it takes a lot of planning. You got months and weeks and whatever to prepare for that. Whereas with natural disasters, there's no lead time for that. They just happen, and so you don't have the time to prepare, not just your time but financially. So basically, truckers are losing a lot of money by volunteering their time for this, but they're doing it out of the kindness of their heart. And I think, again, we see that just how good-natured they are in these very tragic times, unfortunately. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely goes to show they're drop everything and do what I can to help.
When you mentioned the financial, in a lot of cases, literally shutting down their business to help out in these situations.
Right. And it's amazing. And again, we're seeing the stories across the country from trucking companies that are nowhere freaking near, like North Carolina. I think one of them is out of Oklahoma. That's it's not a short drive. So anyway, so that being said, though, I think I'll use this time right now to remind just the trucking community and everyone, for that matter, that to make sure that if you're going to volunteer, that you coordinate with authorized organizations before collecting supplies and then heading to a disaster zone. So a good rule of thumb is if you're not hauling directly for FEMA or if you're not picking up a load with the American Logistics Aid Network, there's a good chance that you're going to be told to turn around, because the thing about these disaster areas is that they're chaotic. There's a lot of, for obvious reasons, there's a lot going on there, and especially in North Carolina where you have that interstate shutdown. And so traffic is seriously compromised. And so if you have a whole bunch of unauthorized vehicles, headed to one, concentrated location, that can cause a lot of problems. And so, as chaotic as it is kind of the relief efforts are somewhat pretty well organized, by the federal government and then authorized agencies and organizations. So you need to make sure that you are participating with those, again, authorized organizations. So the way you could do that is, if you don't already have an account with FEMA, you're not going to get one in time. But you can go through the American Logistics Aid Network. You can go through it's called alanaid.org. That's ALAN aid.org. FEMA will also direct people to the National Voluntary Organizations Active in Disaster. So that's nvoad.org. Check out those websites, and you can have plenty of opportunities to help.
Yeah, it sucks too, because you start seeing things on news coverage of people being turned away because of this, and I think folks get the wrong impression of why those are getting rerouted and turned around. So that's some good information.
There's a reason that these kind of checks and balances are in place. I mean, in states will have, emergency declarations where sometimes you can, in a certain state, you can bypass a weigh station or not need a permit. Sure. You just need a certain document, but you got to make sure you're covering all those bases before you get to that point. So that's kind of the key, just like you said there. And all right, well, let's go ahead and keep it going. I guess we got on a sweet start here with that candy talk. So we got some more roses coming on from Ryan here.
You did there. That's nice. Let's send some roses out to Kenneth Moore. He is a veteran of the U.S. Navy with over 30 years of trucking experience. And I know on Landline now we've covered it a lot about, just how hard it is to stay healthy while being on the road, eating healthy, getting in a workout.
There's time, too. I mean, when are you going to go to the gym?
I sit at a desk most of the time, and I'm still having issues with that. But in a recent Facebook post, an officer with the Waubonsee County Sheriff's Office, I'm pretty sure I don't even know if I got that right.
We're going to go with
whatever.
it.
It's in Alma, Kansas, so if you'd like to check it out sometime or fact check me on that. But they recently showed some love to Moore after an officer encountered the driver at a local travel plaza. In that post, he said, quote, "So I'm eating a burrito and writing reports parked in the Flint Hills Plaza North lot, and I see this dude running laps, and it's like, all right, this man is getting a workout in. That's awesome. Halfway through my burrito, this dude then pulls out free weights from his truck and starts pumping iron."
Nice.
So the officer's sitting there, he's watching him do bicep curls and standing military presses. This cat is getting after it. Turns out he's like 50 plus too,
he's
by
no
the way.
spring chicken. Yeah, it's good for him, man.
The driver and the officer, at that point, he's like, I got to get out and talk to this dude. So he goes over there, introduces himself, tells him how cool it is that he thinks he's getting this workout in and making the most of his time. And then they bonded over their, shared military experience. For someone, again, who sits at their desk all the time, still struggles to find the time or the motivation to actually get a workout in, tip of the cap to Ken for getting that done and making us lazy bums all look bad.
So. Well, and just that visual of, you kind of shame, you feel, I'm sure, the amount of shame. You're eating a burrito and this dude's just killing it in the parking lot. You're like, maybe I need to evaluate what I'm doing here. But, props to him for giving him credit too and kind of putting it out there for everybody to see. All right,
I'm just sitting there thinking of that guy shame pounding that burrito in a parking lot. Don't look at me!
All right, well, I guess we couldn't stay on this Roses kick forever. So the raspberries have arrived, huh, Tyson?
Yeah, let me rain on everyone's parade real quick. So, raspberries to basically whoever is responsible for slashing 56 tires on 8 trucks at a TA travel center. This happened in Madison County, Tennessee. So basically, exactly as I said, bunch of tires slashed. The one trucker had 9 tires slashed, while another had all 18 of his tires punctured and deflated. So this does not seem to be targeted at a particular company. So like earlier, for example, I wrote about a former driver for Swift who went on a multi-state arson spree where he set fire to specifically Swift trailers at truck stops ranging from California to Alabama. It was a wild case.
Did they catch him, though?
They did.
Was it Swift?
Yeah. It was not very swift. It was
Swift justice.
I got
it. There we go. He'll put the quarter in.
But this is not that. These were just random, what appears to be just random victims here. So, assuming an average price of $500 per tire, that's like $28,000 in damages. And 2 weeks earlier, tires were slashed at the 101 Travel Plaza in Lexington, Tennessee, which is about 30 miles east of this TA. So I don't know what's going on in Tennessee, but
they need to start questioning some employees at tire centers.
Think
or something.
so. On a related note, I also came across some social media misinformation. Shocker, that's where you can find it. Yeah, you can find that there. So a quick round of raspberries to whoever started and spread the rumors of migrants slashing tires of dozens of trucks providing supplies for hurricane relief efforts. Without getting too deep in the weeds, did not happen.
Was that an AI-generated headline there?
Apparently, it fused a bunch of stories together, including the one we just talked about, to come up with that. It didn't happen, and not to mention, like, the tires that were slashed that we're talking about, this incident happened just, like, prior to Hurricane Helene ever happened, so that wasn't the case here. But so, yeah, if you've come across that, viral post, just ignore it, don't share it, or call it out. But I just want to point out, did not happen.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about how hard it is to find a safe place to park all the time, and then you think you have one, and then you're, the victim of this kind of vandalism. So it just kind of sucks. And hopefully there's some security footage or something that, catch. Obviously, it's somebody in that area or some buddies in that area is kind of going on a spree here, because that seems too much of a coincidence there to be that close and not be related. All right, well, I think you're going to up the ante here, Ryan, and maybe give out some even raspberries to even more than a couple individuals.
Yeah, you mentioned that it's always difficult to find a place to park. Raspberries going out to College Station, Texas. That's right, the entire damn city. With a new law now in force that prohibits parking commercial vehicles overnight on city streets or alleys. So you cannot park on a single city street there. Violation of that parking ordinance can result in fines up to $500 per day, with each day being deemed a separate offense. And officials said complaints from residents about road congestion, along with some of the safety issues, were the reason for the ban. But Texas state law already prohibits commercial vehicles from parking overnight in residential subdivisions and in residential areas. So with that new ordinance, College Station joins Houston, Fort Worth, Dallas as well on the list of Lone Star State cities to enact truck parking bans. And Tyson, as you pointed out to me, San Antonio also currently mulling that over. The city council considering a proposal that would prohibit truck parking on 70% of the city streets. And with truck parking already an issue in Texas, we've seen a lot of some of these pay-to-park places going in Texas, and that's been somewhat of a remedy. But, I mean, look, it's a huge state. You're not going to get across it in a day, man. Yeah. So you're going to have to park sometime in Texas, and these cities continue to say, not here.
So, real quick, I just want to mention on that San Antonio one. So I've been following that closely. That was supposed to go before the city council like months ago, and it still hasn't reached the city council. So I have it on good authority that it's because they are reaching out to the trucking industry to get more input on that. So kind of like a roses to San Antonio. They're going to have a parking ordinance, but it's going to be informed by the trucking industry at least.
Listen to that. So actually listening to input.
Well, and just so we don't end on a totally bad note here, let's go ahead and we have time maybe sneak one in, one more in here before we go on here. One more rose here, Tyson.
So roses to a four-wheeler who saved the life of an 18-wheeler. So, what happened was a tractor-trailer caught fire by the Hamptons Roads Bridge Tunnel, and the passenger driver next to this trucker noticed that, there's a fire in this engine bay. So he honked the horn, did not get the trucker's attention, so he drove in front of the truck and stopped the car, told the trucker to get out of the truck, which he did, and just moments later, the engine blew. And so this four-wheeler basically saved this life of this truck driver. But what I wanted to highlight this story is because we see it the other way around all the time, truckers saving other motorists, but it goes, the other way around also, which is you got passenger vehicle drivers, the four-wheelers helping truck drivers as well. Basically, as much as everyone is an a-hole on the roadways, and they are, we're just not on our best behavior.
Everyone's a bad driver but me.
That's right. That's exactly right. At the end of the day, if something bad does happen, people are just human at the end of the day. People are typically good people, and when something bad happens, we do come together, and all motorists are helping each other in time of need. And we saw that with this four-wheeler, so it's good to know.
I assume this was a real roller coaster of emotion for the driver of the semi, though, right?
because like somebody pulls in front of you, slams on your brakes, you're like, what?
Yeah, exactly.
What
Well, not only that, like you're just getting someone's attention is always tricky. Because you think you're just kind of either road rage thing or trying to be like kind of like you said an a-hole, but he's actually trying to do good. So
Probably went from hating him to loving him
exactly
in like
right.
5 seconds.
Well, that's kind of life, isn't it? All right. Well, thanks for joining us for this edition of Roses and Razzberries. For Ryan Witkowski and Tyson Fisher, I'm S.J. Munoz. Landline Now will be back after this commercial break.
If you're running ultra-low sulfur diesel in your vehicle, make sure you are prepared and protected all winter long with Howes Diesel Treat, the #1 anti-gel product in North America from the 100-plus year trusted brand Howes Products.
Truckdown.com. Whenever you have a breakdown, you need Truckdown.com. 24/7 access to 40,000 verified heavy-duty repair vendors nationwide. Owner-operators need roadside speed. Truckdown.com.
Firestone tires are for more of everything, with more durability for more miles and more confidence in your fleet. Firestone's tested tires help fleets save with value where it matters most. Learn more at bridgestonenationalfleet.com/4moremiles.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com, because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Welcome back. You may have seen the coverage or heard it right here on Landline Now about dozens of tires being slashed on tractor trailers at a truck stop in Tennessee. It's at least the second time it happened in the state in as many months, and the news prompted several people to call OOIDA with insurance questions, asking what they can or should do should something like that happen to them. So we're going to ask those questions here and get some answers thanks to Trista Roby and Trina Skywalker of OOIDA's Truck Insurance Department. Trista and Trina, good to see you. How you doing?
Hi, great. How about you?
Doing all right. Thanks for being here. So before we get started here, did I get that right? I know people have been calling here wanting information about what to do if this happens to them, right? No victims necessarily, but they want some questions answered, right?
Right, yeah. You're correct. It was a big part of the news last week, and I think people have been really worried about it. We've had calls into the truck insurance department. Our agents have been answering questions, and I actually even called our claims office to ask them if they had seen any claims yet, and they've had some of the similar questions that we've had and transferred them to an agent to answer some of those general questions as well.
And these are questions about what they, again, can or should do, I guess, before something like this happens, right? What kind of questions are they asking generally? Really,
the biggest question that we got or that we've had is over and over, would I be covered in this instance? And I think one of the reasons that we get that question is because typically people think or hear that tires aren't covered because of wear and tear. Right. Tires are considered a normal part of maintenance. And so I think people's general perception is tires aren't covered. And in the case of our insurance, that's not necessarily the correct answer. It's considered vandalism. So it'd be covered under your insurance the way vandalism is. And again, like always, we urge you to get with your agent, ask questions. We appreciate those questions, and that's why we're here today. But because every insurance is going to be different, but
it does depend on, I guess, how the tires are damaged, right? You mentioned wear and tear not being covered necessarily.
Yeah, and actually, as Trista was talking, that's exactly what was running through my head. Is because, well, first of all, kind of backtracking a little bit. Anytime there's something like this big in the news, impending weather. Something that could potentially affect a lot of people. We generally do get those calls, folks being proactive, which we cannot stress enough, like how important that is, because it's better to find out beforehand. But yeah, if you have, say, a regular blown tire, usually that's not going to be covered because it is a maintenance issue. It is wear and tear. It's bound to happen if it's not maintained properly. And even in an accident, if you have an accident, a lot of insurance companies will assess the life of the tire, and if it's about ready to be replaced, your payout may not be quite as much because of that. But like Trista said, in this situation, it's vandalism, and I don't know how the wear and tear would impact the claim. If a tire has a puncture in it through an act of vandalism, I don't know that it would impact the claim if it's on the verge of needing replaced versus brand new. I'm guessing it could. Logically, I'm guessing it could.
I mean, when you think about the rest of your equipment depreciating, you would think that tires would depreciate the same way.
Right. But again, we're going back to this is an act of vandalism, and that's a different ballgame than wear and tear.
Yeah. One question I have too is, we've got these. I think it was 8 trucks at that Tennessee truck stop and dozens of tires that were punctured by some crazy person, I think we can probably say. Do you need to prove it somehow? Do you need a police report if something like that were to happen?
I think that's one of the things I heard my agent saying over and over again in the calls was, be sure you get a police report, or if at all possible, get a police report. And I think, especially at that truck stop that you were talking about, there's probably a heavy police presence anyway. Right. But yeah, a police report's only going to help.
Well, and with a lot of claims, there's going to be an adjuster that does some investigating.
Right.
There's going to be some research done. If insurance companies just willy-nilly paid out on claims, then, we'd all be broke.
Right. Yeah,
it would be you wouldn't be able to afford it. So there is going to be some measure of investigation. But with anything, a police report is going to help.
Right. So I know a lot of the questions you got from people that were calling in, they were wondering, would I be covered if this happened to me? Is there something that people should be doing before something like this happens? No one plans to have their tires punctured, obviously. But is there something they need to do differently or think differently about in the, basically planning for the unplannable, I guess?
Really, I think the big thing, and at least this is with our insurance company, and again, that's where it becomes important to check your policy, check with your agent. But, this goes back to, we've talked about physical damage coverage before. The coverage for the truck itself covers fire, theft, collision, vandalism, acts of God, that sort of thing. And so that's where the tires would be covered, is under that physical damage coverage. So if you're carrying liability only, protection of the public, then that's where you're going to run into a brick wall. And I'd say that's pretty accurate across the board with insurance.
Right. Yeah, and as far as like proactive measures, I'm not sure what you could do to be proactive against someone running around with an ice pick. If you had a camera system, and I don't know that people want to go to that extent, that might help further prove, your side of the story or whatever transpired. But yeah, that's kind of a tough one because, that's not always available.
Well, and these, again, there have been at least 2 separate occasions this has happened to truck drivers, I think both of them in Tennessee.
And maybe even spilling over into Arkansas, I think.
I did read an article.
I think they thought that the
alluding
Arkansas ones were related.
Yeah, and I know they think that it's possibly the same person. Again, I know, authorities are looking into it. But these are high-profile kind of cases because they have kind of hit national headlines and, they're being covered by the media. If it's a one-off, though, and again, some kid or whatever decides
a copycat ice pick bandit.
Exactly, yeah. Then again, you would have to think about, as you talked about, getting proof, police report, that kind of thing. After the fact, it's as simple as making a phone call to your insurance company, right? And then kind of walking through the steps.
Well, and if you're at a truck stop, chances are they're going to have camera footage, And so when I said it's not always available earlier in my head, I'm like, well, if you purchase one, it is. Yeah. But if you're in a public area, that maybe not. I think the majority of what we read, it was at a truck stop or something of that nature, but that doesn't mean it would be every time.
Yeah. And it stinks for those people, obviously, because they're not able to work that day, and they got to
Right.
go through the insurance process, which, as you know, and we all know, is not a fun process. No offense to anybody. No offense to present company.
We're a delight.
But yeah. Yeah, it's a hassle, but again, it's one of these things that has prompted conversations, and it's important to have those conversations. And by talking about it, we're kind of educating people about what goes on and what you can do.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and, also, I just thought about the fact of if it's only one tire, that may even be under your deductible. So that's something to take into consideration too. What is your deductible? Ideally, it's something that would be covered by insurance, but even if they don't deny the claim, they could still say, well, your deductible's $1,000 and it's an $800 tire or whatever. They're usually more expensive than that, but
Unfortunate situation for everybody involved. But again, we're trying to hopefully help some answers. And if you have questions, call your insurance company, as people have been doing, and they would be more than happy to answer those questions. Trista and Trina, we appreciate you answering our questions today, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you so much for having us.
Our thanks to Trista Roby and Trina Skywalker of OOIDA, and our thanks to you for listening to the show today. We're out of time for now, but back tomorrow, so until we meet again, safe travels out there.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
I'm a dad,
a son,
a husband,
wife,
I'm a writer,
photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
My kids.
chrome, and I am a professional truck driver.
And together, we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us.
Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.